This video is for the flat-felled seam. That is spelled F-L-A-T dash F-E-L-L-E-D, flat-felled seam. This one is very common for denim and also for men's dress shirts. Your seam allowances will be fully secured down on either the inside or outside of your garment, depending on which way you start the sample. For denim, they typically start the sample wrong sides together. For dress shirts, they typically start right sides together. And you'll see why as we go along. So we're going to do ours wrong sides together, just like they do with denim. And for this one, we're using our same rectangle that we've been using so far. Cutting both of those out with a straight edge on the side that you're going to sew together, pinked edges everywhere else, and green line parallel to your selvage. Okay, we're going to start with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So wrong sides together, line it up with that 1/2 inch marking, and we'll do a plain seam going down. Now we'll head over to our ironing board. As always, we're going to start with busting open our seam allowances. So separate those rectangles, get that nice flat front on the other side. Press. And then these are both going to get pressed over to one side as well. So both towards the right or towards the back of the body. Press those over. Okay, and then this one we're going to end up hiding the raw edges. The first thing we need to do is trim our lower seam allowance though. So now that we've got them both over to the right, that one that's sitting on bottom, I'm going to trim it down to 1/4 inch. So essentially trimming it in half. Just that one seam allowance. None of the other layers should be getting cut at the moment. Take that out. And then the top seam allowance is going to get wrapped around the bottom one and folded down to 1/4 inch so that the raw edges get tucked under. I'm going to try and zoom in for this one. Okay, this should give you a better picture. So I am tucking under my raw edges, wrapping it around that seam allowance that is underneath and folding it down to 1/4 inch. Again, use your ruler to make sure that you're getting a consistent measurement on the entire length of the seam. And I usually press it in small sections so that I can measure another section. So this is what it's looking like at the moment. You've just got that 1/4 inch kind of tube sitting on top of your fabric, and all of your raw edges are underneath there. Now in a minute we're going to go to our sewing machine and do another edge stitch. So with it open, I want to go through all the layers. I'm going to do an edge stitch right along that folded edge that we just created. Okay, all along down here. So now for that edge stitch. I've got my sample opened up. My tube is still sitting right here on top of my fabric. So 1/4 inch wide. On this folded edge that we just created, we're going to do an edge stitch. That's as close to the edge as we can get. So line that up, that folded edge, with the inside of your toe. Start with your back stitch. And then follow along that edge as close as you can stay, and keep it a consistent distance. And finish with your back stitch again. So your finished sample on the outside, you should have a double row of stitching 1/4 inch apart with all of those seam allowances secured underneath. And on the inside, it'll look very similar to the welt. You'll have a seam on one side with a top stitch on the other, 1/4 inch apart as well. So this one, denim, the seam allowances all end up on the outside of your garment, folded under and stitched down. For men's dress shirts, they typically start right sides together, and all of the seam allowances end up on the inside. So it's essentially the same sample, just flipped. This would be the outside, this would be the inside of the garment, this would be the outside if you were doing a dress shirt.